Hey y'all, happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Y'all come on in. We are here for another Hey y'all, happy Tuesday. For another lemon squeeze Tuesday. And I want to go on and get into it. I know I'm a little late today. I said 7-ish. But here I am at 7:25, but it's all good. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. I wanted to just do some little housekeeping stuff. I've been holding myself accountable to lemon squeeze every single Tuesday this month. I think the only week that I didn't do was the first Tuesday, but I'm back. And so the intent the intention is um to show up every Tuesday for Lemon Squeeze, where we talk about a different topic. So if you don't know, my name is Fatia Doster. Most people call me Tia, so feel free to call me Tia. I am the founder of Juice Defined and your juice coach. And what I do is I help people reframe the way that they see wellness, right? Simply put, as we know, when we talked about week over week, that wellness is multi-dimensional, multi components, and it's not just exercise and diet. It's also, you know, caring for the mind, caring for the spirit. So total wellness is a combination of all of those things. And so when I say reframing the way that we see wellness, that means that, we stop thinking about it from a tunnel vision point of view or a singular point of view, and start to expand the way that we see wellness. And that can be several things. Last week we talked about rest. That was a really good conversation about the importance of rest and how that contributes to our wellness as a whole. Also, rest being a divine gift or a spiritual practice, and how we implement that most oftentimes makes the difference in the way that we show up for ourselves and show up for other people. So if y'all haven't caught that live last Tuesday, check it out. It's still up on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube. So you can find it there. Today I have another topic that I brought that I want to bring for discussion. And that is, I titled it The Book of Healthier Habits, because when I started like really thinking about it and trying to really put my thoughts together, hey Joy, get my thoughts together. Um, I was originally going to approach it from a whole different standpoint, but I didn't want to be like really preachy with it. So that kind of transformed into something else, which I think is still a good conversation to be had. So I want to kind of talk about what healthier habits is, and just kind of baby step it all the way through. So y'all gonna have to stick around and stay with me, because I'm gonna start off talking about a certain thing, like talking about habits in a certain way, and then kind of expand it into a conversation that we can kind of bring back around to nutrition and juicing and things of that nature. Yes, Joy, I'm glad too. Sometimes when you're trying to do so many different things, like, I mean, I feel joy doing this, right? And so it's important for me to, not only show up for y'all, but show up for me, right? And especially if I want to, again, do exactly what it is that I'm set to do, which is reframe the way people think about wellness and what that means. I always tell people, like, Juice Defined is just a hub, right, that creates access to healthier options. But that's what that is, right? That's an actionable step. But before those actionable steps take place, there has to be some form of transition or some form of transformation of the mind and the spirit. And that only comes through learning and conversation, and um, you know, like true divine intervention, if I'm being real, right? And I'm just speaking like from my own experience with that type of transformation. That type of transformation, it didn't just come, you know, randomly. You know what I mean? Like, and once you have that revelation, like there are steps to this thing. And so that's what I really want to touch on and hone into with the lemon squeeze. Like it's more, this is like the more of the mental, emotional, spiritual aspect of transformation. And then the shop provides like a tangible aspect that you can tap into if you just need like a practical resource. So with that being said, and that kind of lead me into exactly what I'm gonna talk about, because this is like the field that I grew up in. And when I started thinking about it from a nutritional standpoint, it just all started to flow and make sense. So as I started writing my notes, or typing my notes rather, it just kind of flows. So I hope it flows tonight. I hope it makes sense. If you are here, welcome. Give me a couple of little thumbs ups or green hearts. I love green hearts. That's my favorite emoji. So if you want to throw some green hearts in the chat, just to let me know, like, you here, you feel me, you with me, you following me, you understand. Feel free to ask questions, chime in if you have any revelations or if anything comes to mind. And I definitely will be able to touch on that as well. So with that being said, I started thinking about this healthier habits thing, um, thinking about addictions. Because remember, like thank you for the hearts. I started thinking about healthier habits in terms, because first of all, let's start here. Oftentimes when you're working on certain things, you start from the end and then work your way to where you are now, right? So you start to think about, um, I'm thinking about addiction as a therapeutic practice. Like that's the field that I come from. I'm a mental health therapist by profession. That is the industry and the field that I was trained in. I have my master's in mental health counseling. I'm a certified addictions professional. And that's been my professional training for ever. Like I got my master's degree in 2009, but even before that, I was working in the field, just not in a therapy component, if that makes sense. So, you got to work your way up, that type of thing. And so I've been working in the field of addictions and substance use for so many years and in different capacities, from prisons to jails to schools to in the community to residential treatment facilities to outpatient treatment facilities to going to people's homes. Like, it's been every aspect that you could think of mental health and substance use and addictions. I've worked it, right? Because that is my specialty and that was a field that I enjoyed. But you got to remember, like, sometimes you go out and get these degrees, you don't really know how you're going to start and how you're going to end up. Like, that's just facts, right? Because you get degrees and you think about, okay, the traditional thing that most people do when you get these certain degrees, you're going to go in places where, number one, you can make some money, which we ain't make no money. Like pre-pandemic, I'm sorry, like that field was like the education field. You wasn't really making no money like that. And very few people, there are outliers, don't get me wrong. So if anybody in here, I know if you get your own practice and this and this and that, you may have a different experience. But when you're working in more traditional settings like nonprofit organizations, and things of that nature, like oftentimes you don't see a large monetary gain. Like a lot of it is just fulfillment for the most part and the love of what you do. You know what I mean? And so for many years, like I worked in different capacities of it, just trying to fill out like what was my niche, like what do I actually love to do. And when we think about it as a therapeutic practice, as I said, it's so many different components that you could tap into when it comes to therapy, because not everybody deal with addictions. In fact, in my experience talking to other people, most people don't want to deal with addictions. Most people be like, that's the hardest field to deal with. Most people don't last long in that field. And so I was kind of like an outlier in the sense that I enjoyed it. Like don't box me into the whole severe and persistently mentally ill, like that wasn't my lane. I did that for a while, for a spell, and it wasn't my thing. But when I got into the field of addictions, it put a whole new spin on what therapy meant for me as a practitioner. So, you know, addictions as a therapeutic practice is more or less in the academia field what they say, we're kind of taught to see addictions as a disease. Like that's how we're taught about addictions. Look at it as a disease, meaning that, you know, it's a combination of brain function that is impacted as well as behaviors. So imagine working in a field where you're tackling not only behaviors, right, which you have certain theories and modalities that you use to change behaviors, but there's also like that brain function capacity where, you think about like hormones, you think about cognition, you think about, memory, you think about environment and all of these other things that and genetics that impact our brain function and how we think about things, right? And so that's how it's kind of been taught to us from a traditional standpoint. Now, when I was in school, talking about like, or going through like my master's degree, yes, we had substance use and addictions courses, but it did not really fuel me in the capacity that I'm in right now. So yes, I learned in a traditional setting, I learned in a traditional manner that addictions is a disease or a substance use disorder, because it is in the DSM, where people can be diagnosed with a disorder, right? Called substance use or substance abuse disorder. So, most people will see it as that behavioral issue, that brain function issue, and we'll see it as a progressive disease, meaning that it gets worse over time. And so that just kind of speaks also to like the biological aspects and components of it. And so we would, part of our practice would be to incorporate different modifications or incorporate different practices that help people transform not only their brain function but their behaviors. So that was a big part of what we did. Right. And remember, all of this is by the book, like what we learned in school and what we learned in, all of these courses that we take over time that we spend all this money for that I'm still paying off now. We learned about all of these different ways and modalities in which to address substance use disorder or disease. But never did we learn about the impact that food and nutrition has on addictions. And mainly because most times we didn't see addiction as anything other than illicit substances. Let's be real. When a person say addictions, when a person say, they're addicted to something, or when a person mentions substance use, that most times you're going to think cocaine, heroin, opiate, or any type of opiates, any type of methamphetamines, marijuana, alcohol. Like these are like the main things that people talk about. And then you talk a little bit, maybe not in our community so much, but there is a component of addiction or mental health disorder that speaks about food addiction, right? That's a small, that's another component or aspect. But in our community, most times we're going to think about addiction and substance use in terms of illegal drugs, and no fault to nobody, no knock. But over time, during this process of becoming like this juice enthusiast and things of that nature, like opening Juice to Find and going through, my own experience and process in life, I started to see things a little bit different. So not to throw the baby away with the bathwater, because you can still use those other modalities. But where I saw the lack was that we did not talk enough, even in that regard, about how food and nutrition can be a remedy to that. So that's what I'm taking you on a journey. Just follow me, comment in the chat if you like. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, just drop them in the chat. But I'm painting a picture, right? Because remember, you got to baby step this thing. I didn't come to this overnight. So remember that when we talk about addiction, most times we're talking about the abuse of substances, right? And when we think about substances, let's really break down the definition of substances. Like when we talk about, or the definition of substances is that of which a thing consists, physical matter or material, a species of matter of definite chemical composition. That last one, well, those last two kind of stuck with me, right? Physical matter or material. So basically, anything you could touch could be a substance, pretty much, right? Physical matter or material. So that could be anything. Literally, it could be this table, this chair I'm sitting on, physical matter or material. Now, the last one is a species of matter of definite chemical composition. So that's anything made up of chemicals. When we think about chemicals, chemicals obviously can, we know what chemicals is from science, right? So it's the combination of different types of matter, basically, right? And so obviously that's very vague and generic, because when we're talking about addictions and the abuse of substances, we're not thinking about any physical thing. We're not thinking about that. But when you throw the chemical composition in there, then we're talking about, okay, well, anything that contains a chemical, which is still most things, right? The finishing on the table, the paint on the wall, the whatever, right? Like anything that contains some sort of chemical, right, is what we can consider like a chemical composition. Now, when we talk about controlled substances, because obviously, like when you're dealing with substances in the field of addictions, right? Most times you're talking about controlled substances, more notably like illegal drugs or illicit drugs, right? But it could also be over the counter drugs, drugs that have been prescribed to us. It can be any of those things, right? But controlled substances, which can be any of a category of behavior altering or mind altering or addictive drugs, right? Now, get this. This was in a dictionary, such as heroin or cocaine. So they was very clear. Controlled substance, i.e., heroin or cocaine, whose possession and use are restricted by law. Now, we could dive deep in this or we could stay shallow. Whatever you want to do, whatever you decide. But when we're in the dictionary of controlled substances, they make it clear that it is a behavior altering, mind altering, addictive drug. But the example that they give is heroin or cocaine. Specifically, look it up. I did the dictionary on the phone. So heroin or cocaine, whose possession and use are restricted by law. So first they go from a very pinpointed definition: behavior altering, mind altering, addictive drug. And then they start to box you in. Heroin, cocaine, whose possessions, heroin, cocaine, restricted by the law. Now, abuse of that substance, controlled or not, is the overconsumption of it. So when you overconsume, or when you taking too much, or when you're doing too much, then it becomes abuse. So I'm thinking like, okay, like even when obviously we know the law ain't the end all be all, because it's a lot of things that's legal that's just not morally right. Like we could talk about it, right? So it's not necessarily the fact that it's a behavior altering, mind altering, addictive drug. It's the fact that you're already conditioning people to believe that it's only cocaine, heroin, restricted by the law. So I'm like, okay, as I started on this my own personal journey and I started to understand like what is the purpose of juice defined? Like, what is it that the community really needs? What am I really working on? Like, what's really happening here? And what is this journey that I'm on? The revelation wasn't just about the controlled substances that were restricted by the law. Because let's be real and let's be honest, like in our communities, our mind is controlled, our bodies are controlled, our behaviors are controlled. We are addicted to more than just things that's prohibited by the law, or not prohibited, restricted, by the law, right? And so I'm like, okay, so this is kind of where my own personal journey started to unfold, because I'm looking around I'm looking around at the state of the community, or the state of society in general, right? And I'm looking at the things that are behavior altering, mind altering, addictive substances, chemicals, and it's not just heroin and cocaine by far. Now, if you feel me on that, like you done seen different things that had the ability to alter our behaviors and alter our minds and alter the way that we ultimately respond to society, like put one in the chat, or put me some green hearts in the chat, because whatever the dictionary said, you can't box that in, because that's not the only thing that has that effect. So then I started thinking, where else do we find these controlled chemicals or substances? Like, where else do we see these things? And so I started rolling off a list of things in my head, because I'm like, okay, well, surely there are more things that have this effect on us, that are not legally, or that are not restricted by the law, especially in America. And the first thing I thought of was food. You name it, you guessed it, food, right? And so when we think about food in terms of being a chemical or being a substance that's being mind altering, behavior altering, addictive, what you think? Processed foods, preservatives, food coloring, food flavoring. Those are some of the things I came up with. Y'all could type in the chat if you know some other ones pertaining to food. But if we could walk up and down Publix, Walmart, wherever, and we can see food that contain all of those things. What are those? Behavior altering, mind altering, addictive chemicals or substances, right? Then I'm thinking about the air that we breathe. I'm like, the air that we breathe got chemicals in it. I mean, mind altering, maybe a stretch, maybe over the long term. I'm sure it's a whole lot of studies. We ain't gonna get into all that right now about how different chemicals and substances in the air have the ability to impact our minds or alter our minds over the course of time. Maybe not immediately, but over the long term. When you think about smoke in the air, gas, factories, and that lead me to like think just about different things. Like, it ain't even really no secret no more, because if you live in South Florida, or if you live in Dade or Broward County, then you already know. Like, I just seen a whole thing where Miramar is trying to stop Miami Gardens or the county from expanding this whole dump operation on 47 off the turnpike. Like, they had meetings about it. They done did sign this petition. Call your legislator, call your mayor, call, all of these people, because they like, hell no, don't put this stuff in here that's going to pollute our air even more than it's already polluting the air. That's in my neighborhood. literally up the street from me. Or I think back to like the Formula One, the whole Formula One racing whole thing where, they wanted to bring it over here to the stadium. And there was so many protests and so many people that were against it because of all of the chemicals that those cars put into the air. So this is like behavior altering, mind altering, addictive substances or chemicals. Of course, maybe not in the immediate, but in the long term. Y'all look it up for yourself, do your research about all of that. But it's a fact that this is what's going on, right? So you think about with the air. Oh, remember how they was talking about the chemtrails? How you got the airplanes just flying over with all of the chemicals flying out. They spraying all these chemicals, and all the conspiracy theorists saying, oh, they spraying chemicals, and the chemicals supposed to I don't know, child, turn us into zombies or something or whatever. But that's another component of air being contaminated with chemicals and substances. So that is also a thing. The next thing is water. Like, these are all things we consume every day. Water. You got bacteria and parasites, like all kind of things in the water. They be like, don't drink tap water because it got all these chemicals in it, lead and parasites and all of this, all kind of stuff in the water. The water you drink every day. Now we buying bottled water. Like, that's an expense. Water is an expense now because we have to buy it bottled up in order to believe that we're consuming a healthier type of water. We fight now over what water is the best. I'm over here like spring water me all day. I'm a Zephyr Hills kind of girl. I don't make no qualms about it. But then you got all the other, but matter of fact, y'all probably seen this too, where they did the study on different types of waters and which waters had the most bacteria in it. So they had like Dasani, all the different types of waters, Dasani water. I think they had Zephyr Hills. They had I can't think of all the waters right now, but basically all the bottled waters. And they was testing the bottled waters to see, which one was most contaminated, right? And pretty much all the waters had contamination in it. It was just like which ones, or chemicals, but which one had the least amount. It's almost like the lesser of two evils. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like how they doing these candidates and there's all this stuff going on. Like, it was really like the lesser of the evils. But basically all the waters had chemicals in them. So when we think about other things that's mind altering, behavior altering, addictive, and I know for me, I can't even touch like a Dasani, Aquafina, like my body won't even. Y'all ever seen it? I'm gonna veer off real quick. If y'all watch Atlanta, which is Childish Gambino show, it's going off now, but it was an episode where, remember, he was going into like this black hole or something, and that's when he was supposed to be seeing D'Angelo and all this stuff. And when he got into the thing, he ain't had no water because it was nothing in the little, wherever he entered, it was no water, no nothing, right? And he went he did something, and they put like one bottle of water in there, and it was a Dasani water. It was a Dasani, girl, that thing cracked me up so bad. It was a Dasani water, and he ain't drink. He didn't want to drink the water, right? And I was like, oh, I feel that, because don't put no Dasani water in front of me, because I'll probably just go on and just dehydrate to death, because I can't. But that just go to show like how even our water have chemicals and substances in them that has the capacity to be behavior altering, mind altering, addictive. And again, maybe not in the short term, but in the long term, right? So yeah, That was funny. Oh my God. I gotta go watch that. I gotta watch that whole series again. I done watched it like 3 times already. It was so good. But then you think about things like our hygiene products. I know we've seen like a surge in um, skincare, body care companies as a part of a holistic approach because even to my doggone my ride or die Jergens, it's like you can't even use that no more because now Jergens got all kind of stuff in it. And you be like, what? I've been using it since I was 10, 8, 5. And now you can't even use Jergens. You got to use, like, and so now you have people who are using or deodorant, toothpaste, you name it, like any type of hygiene product, you start to see that it has chemicals and substances in it that's harmful for the mind, harmful for the body, and could be addictive. So that's important. Technological devices. That was the last thing I wrote down. So you got like those technological devices, namely the phone. They all how the phone emits so much radiation when you put it to your ear, and over time it could cause cancer. You can't use the microwave because that got radiation. It's gonna cause all of this and this and that. You can't, like too much screen time, make it, like all of these technological devices utilize some form of energy that is contaminated by some type of chemical or substance or some type of something that has the potential to be mind altering or behavior altering, right? When all of these different negative impacts start to happen. So these are things we consume every day. It's like no longer can you think about addiction as just heroin and cocaine. I don't know why I can't get that word right. Heroin or cocaine. Because there are so many more behavior altering, mind altering, addictive chemicals and substances that we use every single day that's not restricted by the law at all, period. And in a lot of aspects, the law promote a lot of it. So when I say reframing the way that we see wellness, a lot of times that means even just rethinking the things that we've been taught about. What is a controlled substance? What is a substance? What is a mind altering chemical? What is a mind altering substance or behavior altering? What is addictive? How many times do we use certain things, or we use or consume certain things and it's hard to let go? All of those things I just named, like it's difficult sometimes to disconnect yourself from those things if you've been exposed to it for an extended period of time. Right? And so addiction, the abuse or overuse of certain chemicals and substances that's found in the things that we use every single day. So my background as a therapist, specifically a certified addictions professional, was not some things that I learned in the textbook. Because we ain't talk about this. I guarantee you that. We ain't talk about this. Over 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we was not talking about this. So it wasn't nothing you learn in school. And then when you get in the workforce, you are honed in on a specific thing. So if I'm honed in and working mostly at rehab centers or, outpatient, or working specifically with addicts who are admitted, or who's being treated for controlled substances as it's defined by the dictionary. When you get into a field that's more holistic, or you start to change routes, or you go on this journey of your own self-exploration and self-education, it look a lot different. So just imagine like being like a deer in headlights trying to figure out, well, what is the purpose of what I'm doing? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? What barriers am I trying to move through? by doing this. And so I started talking about my experience as a therapist working in different rehabs, and every single rehab, you can imagine working in a jail or a prison. I ain't even got to say nothing. It was so much buffoonery going on in there. Another day I have to tell y'all the story about how I quit, but you know, you could just imagine just a lot of the red tape, the bureaucracy of just working in a lot of these nonprofit organizations, especially these big organizations. Like, they're used to doing things a certain way. You have to follow a certain protocol. You have to use certain techniques. You have to report a certain way because they got to answer to a certain, you know, source who get them money. Like, it was just like a never ending cycle of just toxicity, for real. So the last rehab I worked at, this was back in like, I want to say like 2015, 16, something like that. Um, I had never worked at a rehab like this before. I'm a smile because it was a lot of buffoonery there too, but it was it was also very enlightening. And sometimes we had that duality when it comes to how we see certain things. It's very like dialectical because you could see this side, but then it's also you see this side, and then it's like you got to navigate it anyway, right? And so I ain't gonna say the name of the place, but the last rehab I worked at was a residential treatment facility. And this was the first residential treatment facility that I saw incorporate yoga and mindfulness into their practice. The first. I had never seen it before, ever. And at this time, I had never did yoga. You know, I knew what it was, but it wasn't, I mean, I'm not just already a big exercise person or fitness person at this time, even now, but now obviously I know more. But back then, I really just I didn't know much about all of the impacts that yoga and mindfulness can have on the body and the mind, spirit, and all of those things. And this was the first place I worked that they incorporated yoga and mindfulness into the practice for the clients every single day. When I say every single day, every single day. And I was like, wow, that's what's up, because I had never seen it done before. And you can literally see the transformation over time that the clients experience because of that. Because of that. And so working closely with the yoga instructor, I learned a lot of things. I learned a lot about mindfulness and different calming techniques and breathing techniques, and like even yoga, like yoga practices that I had never knew anything about. And I was so amazed because I was like, at this time, I was just getting into my juicing journey, not just, but it was fairly new, and I was still learning, and I still had an eagerness to learn more. And I was learning that there with the instructor. And I was like, wow, this is very different. I was like, this program will be perfect if they incorporated food, nutritional, improve the nutritional habits. Because it's almost like it don't matter where you go, like that general statistic of recidivism don't change. Right. It used to be something like 33% of people go back to jail or go back to rehab or whatever. I don't know what it is now. Don't quote me, but 33% is still kind of, it's still kind of high. That's like a third. So, even incorporating that yoga component, it almost just wasn't enough. It's like, okay, well, if you really want to see like a drastic transformational change, what other things could you implement to help improve or help to rehabilitate the mind and the body from being so damaged by all of these altering substances. And so this is when I first had the revelation of combining, I say now juice and therapy, but of course juice can be expanded to just nutrition in general. But that was the first inkling I had of that type of approach, where you utilize nutrition, juicing, and therapy combined in order to improve the disease of addiction. But using juicing and therapy as a modality or an approach that we can utilize and incorporate to help not only um the mind and the body, but the spirit, and as well as you know the external, the physical. So that was my first experience with just incorporating mindfulness into the practice of or the therapeutic practice. And it started to all just make sense. Like, how do substances even impact, or chemicals even impact the whole person? Like, if we look from a physiological standpoint, and we're looking at like all of the cases of chronic illness that we see in our communities, or that we see in society, like, that's a big thing. You can't get away from chronic illness everywhere you turn, right? Whether that look like kidney disease, or that looks like high blood pressure, or that looks like um, diabetes, or sickle cell, or any of these illnesses that last for an extended period of time. Breakdown of the bodily organs, you will start to see, like I said, kidney disease, your kidneys not functioning properly, your liver not functioning properly, right? When you're consuming chemicals and substances over time, your weakened immune system, because obviously it's hard to fight any disease or any type of disorder or disease when your immune system is not functioning at optimal levels. Gut health and pancreas health, like, these impact almost the entire body outside of the brain. Your gut has the ability and the capacity to control almost every other thing. Reproductive organs, we get people all the time with issues with reproduction, men and women. Now stay with me, because not every single case is caused by substance or chemical use or overuse, overconsumption, but that's our focus today, right now. Mental and emotional changes in brain function that cause mood disorders, alter our hormones, right? Impact our impulse control. We start to lack the ability to manage ourselves in a mental capacity, especially when you under the influence of certain substances. But over time, a lot of those substances we talked about before, food, air, blah blah blah, all that stuff, has the ability to impact our mental state, our brain composition. And that brain composition impacts all of these other things I just named. Then you talk about like the biological impact, where you think about cognition, memory, critical thinking skills, decision making skills. We talk all the time about how the new generation, like, they got anger management issues, or they um they lack social skills, or they're not, they don't know how to make good decisions, or they always making bad decisions, or things of that nature. When you think about all of those substances and chemicals, and where we found them, and the things that I just named, oftentimes that have a grand impact on our biological health. Then you got genetics, where we talk about like um like adaptive changes in gene expression. So the way that our bodies experience like tolerance to certain things. Like, some people, let's talk about how, like, some people can get sick just from you know being around somebody that sneezes, and some people don't. Some people immune systems are stronger, or some people have a higher tolerance for certain bacteria, or um certain bacteria or certain things, that they don't get sick right away. And how our brain and our body responds to different chemicals is very different. But obviously that is in how much, how long, and how our genes are structured in our bodies. And we could go on and on and on and on. I want to try to make it a little bit more concise so we could get out of here. But not to even talk about, like, when we're talking about how substances and chemicals impact the whole person, we're not even talking about like social things, you know, like how we're socially impacted. So these are very important things that, you know, when we look at the whole body, the total person, when we're looking at things from a holistic standpoint, almost every aspect of our lives are being impacted by chemicals and substances that are legal, that are not restricted by the law. Half the time you don't even get no warning labels because legally it's not required. Or legally there are certain things you don't have to disclose on certain things. Going back to talking about like that whole water thing. Like when you think about like the Flint situation, the Flint water situation, or when you think about, I even think about like places in Alabama and Mississippi, like these rural counties and towns, how they water just polluted. Like environmental pollution is a real thing because they have all these factories and all of these things that's producing these massive amounts of toxins, just pouring it into the water. And people live right there, legal. And then you got a lot of those people in these communities coming up with cancer, coming up with all of these different illnesses and ailments. But going back to that, you know, again, that overconsumption of things, you may not experience any impacts of it right away, but over time, they started finding people like getting cancer at a very young age, COPD, and all of these other illnesses that these toxins and these chemicals that can be legally, you know, emitted into our environments, impacting people for the long term. So when we're thinking about all of these substances and these chemicals and how they impact the total body, how do we even, you know, we can be discouraged easily because, you know, we could feel defeated when we are not aware of these things and we don't understand. I remember when when I first got preeclampsia, and I was like, you know, for a while, for a period of time, I was pissed off. I'm like, how the hell this happened? How? I don't know nobody who had this. Nobody in my family. I don't know nobody who I knew like around me. What the hell? And so oftentimes if we are aware of these things, or we're intentionally learning about all of these things that have the ability to impact us, then we less likely to be discouraged and defeated, because then we start to think about, well, what is the solution? How do we, you know, how do we come up with something to, or how do we come up with some type of strategy or plan to reduce the impact that these things are having on our bodies? Right. And that was when I started to feel empowered in my own journey. It was when I just intentionally just started to research and listen and look around and ask questions. Like, this is where, like we talked about choice points last week. When you get to that fork in the road where you just tired of being tired and you got to make a decision on how you're going to take control of your own life, you make a choice. And so if you feeling discouraged or you feeling like, you know, defeated, you make a choice that I'm going to intentionally become aware of what's happening around me, what's happening in front of me, things I probably never even noticed before or paid attention to before, things that's going on within me. That's important too, because oftentimes we don't come to those revelations or that sense of awareness until something happens to us directly. And ain't nothing wrong with that. I ain't shaming nobody for that. That was my experience too. So you ask, like, how do we create a safe space in our bodies where if we just destined to be around these chemicals and have all of these toxins and substances just in our environment and around us, how do we create a safe space in our bodies? How do we create a safe space in our body? How do we reduce the chances or reduce the impact that these things can have on our lives? And so I got 3 ways, then I'm gonna get up out of here. Okay. So 3 ways that you can create a safe space in your body and create a safe space in your environment, as safe as you can. A lot of stuff we can't avoid. We were all breathing in the same air. We all drinking mostly the same water. I mean, we'll go that whole political route, but we're not gonna go there because that's not what today is about. But for the sake of time, I got 3 things, 3 major ways that we can create these safe spaces in our bodies. Obviously, mindfulness and meditation. Remember, I was telling y'all about the last rehab I worked in, and I seen the impact that it had. And this was on the most these are like one of the most detrimental cases of exposure to substances and chemicals. But having the ability to calm the mind, still the mind, meditate, and move your body can do wonders. That's one. How we surround ourselves, who we surround ourselves with, and what we are consuming, our social environment is important because it has it has the potential to influence us more than anything else. They say birds of a feather flock together, or any of those old sayings or whatever that they say. But that is absolutely true. Because if we're around, and I'm gonna just use this as an example, like, when you're living with a partner or you're living with a spouse or whatever, oftentimes, not all the time, because I know some people who, they the outlier, but oftentimes you'll see where, because my partner eat like this, I'm almost like, damn if I do, damn if I don't. Or if you're implementing a certain lifestyle or certain things into your lifestyle and your partner not with it, how long does it typically last before A, you fall off the wagon, hey Christine, or B, they get with the program? One of the two. But our social environment has the potential to influence us in a great way. And that's why it's important to be mindful, like to get around like-minded people who are on a similar journey. Because oftentimes that's the greatest influence or indicator of what the outcome could potentially be. Not all the time. There are outliers. And then again, when you make a choice and you're tired of being tired and you want to do what you got to do, but that's another story. And the third way is obviously what we have a choice to fuel our bodies with: fasting more, consuming more fruits and vegetables. We talked last week about rest and what we meant by fasting as a source of rest for the body, giving the body the ability to heal, fueling our bodies with fruits and vegetables, nutritious foods, also has the potential to help our bodies to heal itself over time, and sometimes immediately. Now, a little extra one too. You want to get involved in politics and you want to get involved in, the impact that a lot of the environmental stuff have on the community as a whole, then get involved in politics. Get in there and talk to your commissioner, your council person, your state rep, your governor, or whoever else. But these are the people that you speak to in regard. Just like I told y'all how Miramar, they had this petition going around, and they had a whole meeting about do not put this incinerator, and it ain't even in a city, it's in Miami Gardens. So, don't put that incinerator in Miami Gardens, which is out of our district, but still has the capacity to impact us in a big way. So get involved in your local politics. But that's a little extra one too. But the main thing, the things that you have the ability to control right now, is those 3 first things that I named. Is being able to still the mind, meditate, do breath work, do those mindfulness practices that keep you present and focused on what's the task at hand, what's the goal. Get around people on the same page. Another thing about the social aspect, when I think about when I started the juice bar and I had most of my family working there, friends, mostly family, and not one person who started working there with me was into juicing or fasting or, detoxing. Nobody. But guess what? Every single one of those people now have done at least one detox or one fast at least. And if they have not done it yet, it's because they're a child and they're still learning. That's a success story. I'll talk about that another day. But get around people and get in environments that's going to encourage you to heal. So as we start to like wrap up really quick, I got 4 more minutes before I hit the hour mark. I'm gonna get out of here. Um, when you at that fork in the road, like what choice will you make? Like a lot of us are walking around with chronic illness as we speak. A lot of us are walking around with a lot of utilizing a lot of mind altering, behavior altering, addictive things that's just around us in our environment, in our homes, in our food, in our the things we choose to eat. Right? How will the choices that you make impact not only you and your family, but your legacy? Remember, I said last week that your legacy, yes, is money and wealth, but it's also behaviors and mindsets that we teach the people around us by the way that we do things. That's powerful. So spend more time fasting. Incorporate juicing as a practical strategy. That's another reason I love juicing, is because it's a practical strategy for a long term solution. Unplug often. Get off the internet. Cut the TV off. Get off the phone. All those things we talked about earlier as an addictive, mind altering, behavior altering chemical or substance. Talk to your family. Get them on board. Make it a challenge. Talk about it more often. You sitting at the table and they eating ham. It's okay to still talk about, okay, so after this, we finna do a family fast. We finna do a family detox. These are the conversations we need to have more often and not shy away from it. Because 9 out of the 10 people sitting at that table got something that needs to be healed. So with that being said, I hope that this information was useful, or this discussion was useful, and help you to just really see um, healthier habits in a different light, addiction in a different light, substances and chemicals in a different light, and how we can utilize, very practical things to heal ourselves, how we can incorporate healthier habits to help curb the impact of mind altering, um, behavior altering, addictive things that we see in our lives every single day, that we consume every single day. So with that being said, next week I'll be back for another Lemon Squeeze Tuesday. I hope y'all enjoyed this. Catch the replay, share it with somebody. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can always DM me. Our phone number is also in the bio, so you can also reach out to us there. Yeah. So consider doing a detox. I'm always plug that. We have a 1 day, we have a 3 day detox, a 7 day modified detox. We have a 21 day detox, and we have our 6 week intensive, our cleanse with intention program that we incorporate sessions just like this in a more intimate setting, as well as juicing. And so I bring quite a few of my holistic practitioner friends in, and it's a great program. Nobody else is doing this. And this is the beginning and the foundation of that modality that I was speaking to you all about, where we incorporate improved nutrition with therapy, but we also utilize the power of blood work and medical practices to help us see the progress that we're making. So if you want more information about that, you can also click the link in my bio, and you can also, again, DM me, hit me up. Our phone number is there. Stop by the shop. We're closed tomorrow for Online Wednesday, but I look forward to seeing y'all soon, and I hope y'all have a great rest of your evening.